Welcome back, wasteland wanderers. Today's lore takes us beyond the irradiated ruins, beyond the familiar threats of raiders and super mutants, into a conspiracy that spans 4 centuries. We're diving into the truth about the Zetans, the alien force that's been watching humanity since the samurai walked feudal Japan. From abducting warriors in the 1600s to harvesting soldiers at Anchorage, they've been studying us, collecting us, preparing for something we can barely comprehend. The light came for me in the wasteland. This is my confession. The light came for me in the fiction wasteland. A beam from the sky that froze my legs and lifted me towards something that shouldn't exist. I thought I knew every threat the capital wasteland could throw at me. Raiders, super mutants, death claws prowling in the dark. But nothing prepared me for what grabbed me that night, near the crashed ship. My name doesn't matter now. What matters is what I saw, what I learned, what they've been doing to us for 400 years. I woke in a cell aboard Mothership Zeta, metal walls, strange lights, and surrounding me, creatures from nightmares with bulbous heads and skin the color of decay. But the creatures weren't the worst part. The worst part was meeting the others, the ones who'd been taken before me. There was Toshiro Kago, a samurai from Japan's Edo period. Let that sink in. He was abducted sometime between 1568 and 1603 during the Azuchi Momoyama period. Over 400 years ago, the Zetans froze him in cryogenic stasis, with his sword still at his hip and fury still in his eyes. When we thawed him out, he couldn't speak English. We couldn't speak Japanese, but the rage in his face needed no translation. Then there was Colonel Hartigan, an American astronaut who disappeared during the 1960s space race. You know the story they told the public? High-altitude weather balloons. His capsule, Clarabella 7, got tangled in weather balloons and crashed. Never recovered the body. That's what they said. That's what they always say. But I found Hartigan aboard Zeta, dead in a cryopod. The stress of what they did to him, combined with pod malfunctions, killed him before we could wake him up. His spacesuit was still pristine. His Clarabella 7 capsule sat in their research lab like a museum piece. And in the ship's logs, I heard his screams, heard him try to make peaceful first contact, heard him believe humans and aliens could learn from each other. They tortured him anyway. Private Elliot Turkorian was there too, a medic with the 108th Infantry Battalion stationed at Anchorage, Alaska. He told me about the day they took him. It was January 2077. Just months before the bombs fell. He and his squad had spent the day in the trenches, patching up soldiers torn apart by Chinese artillery. They were exhausted. They'd pitched their tents for the bod. Night. Then Private Dawkins started screaming. Elliot said there was this blue light from the sky, bathing Dawkins in an otherworldly glow. They all froze, watched him vanish into nothing. Moments later, that same light took all of them. Every member of his medical team, gone from the battlefield. The Chinese probably thought they developed some new American weapon. They had no idea. Neither did anyone else. See, the Zetans have been harvesting humanity's most important people for over 4 centuries. Not random abductions, targeted acquisitions. They took Toshiro Kago, a Tosher warrior from feudal Japan. They took Colonel Hartigan, who had knowledge of America's space program. They took Elliot and his unit during one of the most critical battles of the Resource Wars. And they took Giles Wollstonecroft, the Assistant Chief Executive Officer of Vault-Tec Corporation. Think about that. The second highest ranking executive of the company building humanity's survival bunkers. They grabbed him while he was inspecting the construction of Vault 76, somewhere between 2064 and 2069. What did they learn from interrogating him? What secrets did he spill about the Vault system that was supposed to preserve humanity through nuclear war? What did they discover about our survival strategies, our continuity plans, our last desperate attempts to endure the apocalypse? I found audio logs, dozens of them, recordings of interviews with human subjects spanning centuries. A linguistics specialist from the United States Space Administration named Holly Beresford, a United States senator whose name was redacted from the files, someone from inside the White House itself, people with access to America's most classified projects. The Zetans weren't just collecting specimens, they were gathering intelligence. In the capital wasteland, there's a group called Query Verum, or there was. 3 members, Reed, Underwood, Banks, and Combs. Small-time conspiracy theorists who believed the government was hiding alien contact. Everyone called them crackpots, laughed at them, dismissed their theories as paranoid fantasy, but they were right. In 2063, Query Verum tried to prove their theory. They stole something they believed was clearly inspired by alien technology from the government, a prototype plasma pistol called the Emplex Nova Surge. They thought it would be their smoking gun, evidence that the United States had been reverse engineering Zetan tech. They thought it would expose the conspiracy. It got them killed instead. By May of that year, the group was eradicated. Reed suspected they were betrayed by Dr. Aldwin Morley, a double agent. The government, or the Enclave, or whoever was running the cover-up, they hunted down every member and erased them. The Nova Surge was recovered. The Zetans got it back eventually, and the truth stayed buried. But here's what makes me sick. The official record suggests Enclave power armor and energy weapons were human achievements, innovations developed by American scientists through hard work and ingenuity. But I've seen the original designs aboard Zeta, blueprints marked with symbols no human language uses, schematics that look nothing like anything we could have created. The Enclave's plasma weapons, alien tech, their advanced robotics, reverse engineered from Zetan artifacts. Even Wilson Automatoys, a children's toy company, was accused of using extraterrestrial technology in their products. Imagine that. Your kid's giddy-up buttercup built from blueprints that came from the stars. The government knew. They've known since the 1960s, when Hartigan's disappearance couldn't be explained away. In 2062, after years of incidents they couldn't cover up, they officially recognized the existence of extraterrestrial life. But it was classified at the highest levels, cosmic top secret, above the president's eyes only clearance. The cover-up was immediate and total. Weather balloons, swamp gas, mass hysteria, Project Blue Book declaring every sighting a misidentification. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, scientists in classified facilities were tearing apart alien artifacts, learning, adapting, weaponizing. They found alien bodies. I know they did. There was one at Fort Bannister in the capital wasteland, Subject Z05, held at an Enclave research facility in Appalachia. They studied it, experimented on it, just like the Zetans experimented on us. During the Battle of Anchorage, American soldiers reported strange lights in the sky before entire units vanished. Elliott's squad wasn't the only one. Private Dawkins, Sergeant Daniels, Private Beckett, whole medical teams disappearing. In blue light, while Chinese artillery pounded the mountains, The military wrote it off as enemy weapons, classified the reports, never told the families what really happened. In Appalachia, before the war, locals around Flatwoods kept reporting sightings of something they called the Flatwoods Monster, agents of the Zetans operating on Earth, abducting people from the wilderness. The law didn't take it seriously, dismissed the claims, called the witnesses crazy, but people kept disappearing, kept seeing things in the woods that shouldn't exist. The media ran stories about it, made it sound like folklore, a campfire tale to scare children. Nobody connected it to the alien presence that had been studying Earth for centuries. I found the ship's logs, every abduction recorded in meticulous detail, dates, locations, subject profiles. The Zetans have been patient, methodical, scientific in their approach. They didn't invade, didn't conquer. They observed, studied, harvested. They watched us develop from swords to firearms, from steam engines to nuclear reactors, from horseback to spacecraft. Every major leap in human technology they witnessed, every war, every innovation, every moment of triumph and catastrophe, and they took notes. When I walked through the engineering core of Mothership Zeta, I saw the evidence, specimens from every era of human history, artifacts from civilizations across millennia. In one section, Toshiro's ceremonial katana, taken from him 4 centuries ago. In another, Hartigan's spacesuit from the 1960s. In yet another, contemporary wasteland gear. Raiders, slavers, even super mutants and feral ghouls, all collected post-war. They're building something, a database, an archive of humanity's complete evolution. But for what purpose? Sally helped me understand some of it. She's a little girl who was abducted right after the Great War in 2077, 200 years old now, but still a child in a frilly dress because cryostasis doesn't age you. She's been aboard Zeta longer than anyone else. Who's still alive? She knows things, secrets, where they keep their most valuable specimens, how their technology works. She told me the Zetans get excited about the strangest things. Giddy-up buttercups, those animatronic toy horses. The aliens become fascinated when they see one. She has no idea why. I found what looked like a sacrificial shrine to a giddy-up buttercup, a large circular chamber with the toy in the center, surrounded by human corpses arranged in a pattern. What kind of intelligence studies us for 400 years and builds shrines to our children's toys? If you're still with me after hearing this, hit that like and subscribe button. 2 motherships orbit Earth in 2277, Zeta and an unnamed twin, both massive, both armed with weapons that make our nuclear arsenal look like firecrackers. I've seen what their death ray can do. It has the power of a nuclear warhead, but it's precise, controlled. They could have glassed the entire planet centuries ago if they wanted, but they didn't. They chose to watch instead. That's what terrifies me most. Not their technology, not their cruelty, their patience. 400 years of observation, 400 years of abductions, 400 years of experiments, and they're still watching, still waiting for what? I met Paulson aboard Zeta, a cowboy from the Old West, real leather chaps, 6-shooter on his hip, the works. He said he was hunting the aliens who took his wife, claimed they abducted her years before they got him. He tracked them across the frontier, following stories of strange lights and missing people. Everyone thought he was mad. a drunk chasing desert mirages. He found them anyway, or they found him. Either way, he ended up frozen for over 200 years, preserved like all the rest. When we thawed him out, the first thing he asked was whether we'd seen his wife. We hadn't. She's probably still on the ship somewhere, frozen in some cryopod we never found, or dead, experimented on until there was nothing left. The Zetans don't see us as people. We're specimens, lab rats, sources of data for whatever grand project they're conducting. I saw what they did to some of the subjects. The abominations, half-human, half-alien hybrids with translucent skin and minds consumed by rage. The Zetans call them their greatest triumph, genetic manipulation, combining human and alien DNA. These things don't think, don't reason. They just kill everything, everyone. No discrimination, no hesitation, pure violence encoded into their genes. The Zetans created them and then locked them in containment cells like guard dogs, released them when they needed, to clear sections of the ship during our uprising. I had to kill dozens of them. They used to be human. You could see it in their twisted faces, their deformed bodies. They used to have names, families, lives. The Zetans took all that and turned them into weapons. That's what they think of us. Raw material for experimentation. But the government knew about this. They knew about the abductions, the experiments, the threat hanging in orbit above our heads, and they did nothing. Worse than nothing. They covered it up, silenced anyone who got too close to the truth. After Hartigan disappeared in the 1960s, the existence of aliens became internally recognized by the government in 2062, not publicly acknowledged, internally recognized. There's a difference. It means the people in power knew. The Joint Chiefs knew. The Enclave knew. Probably the president knew. But they decided the American people couldn't handle the truth. So they lied. Repeatedly. Systematically. For over 100 years. Every UFO sighting, weather balloon, every abduction report, sleep paralysis, or mass hysteria. Every piece of evidence debunked by official channels and now buried in classified files. They set up Project Blue Book and similar operations to investigate UFO phenomena, but the real purpose was controlling the narrative, making sure nothing leaked that they didn't want leaked. Meanwhile, they were harvesting technology, reverse engineering everything they could get their hands on. When the Zetans made mistakes, when they lost a recon craft or left behind artifacts, the government swooped in, collected the debris, studied it in secret facilities, turned it into weapons. The Enclave plasma pistol isn't the only example. It's just the most obvious. The Emplex Novasurge prototype that Query Verum stole, that weapon was functionally identical to what the aliens use. Same energy signature, same internal components. The design was too advanced for 2063 human technology, way too advanced. But the official story was that Repcon Aerospace developed it, an American company with American scientists making American innovations, patriotic, comforting, completely false. I found more evidence aboard Zeta, blueprints, technical specifications, research notes in languages I couldn't read but recognized from the alien, computer systems, and I realized something that made my blood run cold. The Enclave didn't just reverse engineer Zetan technology. They understood it, mastered it, improved on it in some cases, which means they had access to alien materials for decades before the Great War, probably since the plan, 1960s, maybe earlier. How much of our pre-war technological advancement was actually ours? How much was stolen from crashed ships and abducted aliens? the plasma weapons that turned the tide at Anchorage, the power armor that made American soldiers unstoppable, the vertibirds, the advanced robotics, the fusion technology. How much was human ingenuity, and how much was alien science filtered through government labs? I think that's why the Enclave survived the Great War so well. They knew it was coming, not just the nuclear exchange with China. They knew about the Zetans, knew what was watching from orbit. They built their continuity of government protocols with that knowledge, planned for a world where humanity would be weakened, scattered, vulnerable, perfect conditions for an alien invasion. Except the invasion never came. The bombs fell in 2077. 200 years of nuclear winter, radiation, mutations, civilization collapsing into tribalism and barbarism. The Zetans watched it all happen, recorded every moment, studied how we adapted to the wasteland, how we mutated, how we survived, and they still didn't act, still didn't invade, still didn't intervene. Why? I've thought about this every day since I escaped Zeta. What are they waiting for? What threshold do we need to cross before observation becomes action? Are they waiting for us to reach a certain technology level, a certain population? Are they waiting for us to kill ourselves off completely? Or are they waiting for something else, something we can't even comprehend? So Ma had a theory. She was a slaver from the capital wasteland who got abducted same time as me. Smart woman, ruthless. She said maybe the Zetans are studying long-term evolutionary adaptation. They took Toshiro in the 1600s to see how humans were before industrialization. Took Hartigan in the 1960s to see us during the space age. Took pre-war soldiers and civilians to document us at our technological peak. Then took post-war survivors to see how we changed after nuclear apocalypse. 400 years of samples, 4 distinct eras of human development, all preserved in cryostasis for comparison, a living laboratory spanning centuries. It makes sense when you think about it. The Zetans aren't invading because we're not the prize. The data is the prize. Understanding how an intelligent species evolves under different pressures, how we fight, how we build, how we destroy, how we survive. We're their science project, and the experiment isn't over yet. Elliot had a different theory. He thinks they seeded life on Earth, that humans are actually an alien creation, and the Zetans are checking in on their experiment. He got really paranoid about it. Started talking about how they're probably making exact copies of us, planning to send them back to Earth to take our places. Replace us, one by one, until there are no real humans left. I don't buy that one. Too complicated. But the fear in his eyes when he said it was real. He genuinely believed we might all be aliens already and not know it. Paulson thought they were demons. Literal demons from hell, collecting souls. He's from the 1800s. His worldview doesn't include space, travel, or genetic engineering. To him, anything that comes from the sky and steals people has to be supernatural. I tried explaining the science to him, but you can't reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. He just gripped his rifle tighter and said he'd kill every demon on the ship or die trying. Toshiro didn't care about theories. He just wanted his sword back. We found it in the waste disposal section, where the Zetans had thrown it after taking it from him 4 centuries ago. The moment we returned it to him, he became unstoppable, cut through aliens, like they were paper. 400 years of rage compressed into every swing. He didn't need to understand their motivations. He just needed to make them pay for what they'd stolen from him. Sally was the only one who tried to understand them on their own terms. She'd been studying them for 200 years, learned their routines, their behaviors, their weaknesses. She said they were afraid of us, not physically. They had better weapons, better technology, better everything, but they were afraid of human unpredictability. The Zetans are logical, methodical. Everything they do follows patterns. But humans? We're chaos. We create art and philosophy alongside weapons of mass destruction. We show compassion to strangers and cruelty to our own families. We're capable of incredible cooperation and devastating betrayal, sometimes in the same breath. The Zetans can't predict us. That's why they keep studying. They're trying to find the pattern, the algorithm, the equation that explains human behavior, and they keep failing because there isn't one. We're fundamentally irrational. It drives them crazy. That's how we beat them. Sally figured it out. We didn't fight them with superior tactics or better weapons. We did the unexpected. We freed captives they thought were docile. We turned their own technology against them in ways they never anticipated. We formed alliances across centuries of human history that made no logical sense. A samurai from the 1600s, a cowboy from the 1800s, an astronaut from the 1960s, a child from the Great War, a slaver and a wastelander from 2277. We had nothing in common except our captivity. By any rational analysis, we should have turned on each other. Instead, we took their ship. We fought through the engineering core, destroyed their generators, spacewalked across the exterior hull, while Earth hung below us, brown and scarred, and somehow still beautiful. We freed more captives, armed ourselves with their own weapons, pushed deeper into the ship. The aliens fought back hard, deployed their guardian drones, released the abominations, called in reinforcements through teleportation matrices, but they couldn't adapt fast enough, couldn't predict what we'd do next, couldn't comprehend how a group of primitives from different eras could coordinate so effectively. We reached the bridge, killed the captain, took control of the ship's weapons systems, and that's when the second mothership appeared, the unnamed twin, coming to reclaim Zeta. They opened fire immediately. Death ray against death ray. The void of space lit up with energy beams powerful enough to crack continents. We'd never used these weapons before. Had no training, no experience. Sally was frantically reading alien controls while Soma tried to aim the death ray, and Elliot screamed about how we were all going to die. But we didn't. We destroyed them, blew that second mothership in two. Fragments that scattered across orbit, watched through the view screen as their hull ruptured and their crew vented into space. Thousands of Zetans, dead in seconds. We'd won. Against impossible odds, we'd actually won. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from the wasteland, hit that like button. It really motivates me to create similar Fallout lores. But winning the battle didn't mean we'd won the war. Zeta was damaged but functional. We'd destroyed the second mothership, but how many more were out there? How many other Zetan vessels orbit Earth, watching, waiting, studying? We'd captured one ship. They have an entire fleet. After the fighting stopped, Sally and Elliot managed to activate a teleportation beacon, dropped it near the crash site of Recon Craft Theta in the capital wasteland. It gave us a way back to Earth, a way home for those of us who still had a home to go back to. Soma left, said she had business to attend to in the wasteland, probably going back to her slaving operation, though she never said it outright. Soma left too, headed into the wastes looking for any trace of his wife, even though 200 years had passed and she was almost certainly dead. He didn't care, said he'd promised to find her, and a promise is a promise no matter how much time goes by. But Toshiro stayed, Elliot stayed, Sally stayed. They looked at the wasteland below through the view screen and realized they had nowhere to go. Toshiro's Japan had been gone for 400 years. The samurai class, the Oda clan he'd fought for, the entire Azuchi Momoyama period, all of it was ancient history. What was he going to do? Wander the capital wasteland in full armor, speaking a language nobody understood? Elliot had left behind a hospital job to serve at Anchorage. Everyone he'd ever known was dead. His country didn't exist anymore. The America he'd fought for had nuked itself into oblivion. And Sally, poor Sally, she'd been a child in 2077. Her parents, her friends, her entire world was 200 years gone. The wasteland below was more alien to her than the ship she'd lived on for 2 centuries. So they stayed aboard Zeta, made it their home. Sally said she'd keep monitoring the systems, make sure the ship stayed in orbit. Elliot started stockpiling weapons, salvaging alien technology. Toshiro just stood at the viewport, staring down at Earth with his hand on his sword. I left. I had to. I needed to tell people what I'd learned. Needed to warn them about what's hanging over their heads. So I used the beacon, teleported back down to the wasteland, and started documenting everything. But here's what keeps me up at night. The Zetans have been watching since 1600. They watched the samurai era in Japan. They watched the American frontier expansion. They watched the space race. They watched the resource wars spiral into nuclear annihilation. They watched the bombs fall and the radiation spread and civilization collapse into the wasteland. And they did nothing. They have weapons that could glass the planet, technology that makes our best pre-war science look primitive. They could have invaded any time in the last 400 years, could have conquered us when we were fighting with swords, could have taken over when we split the atom, could have claimed Earth while we were killing ourselves with nuclear fire. But they chose to observe, chose to study, chose to wait. So what are they waiting for? I think I figured it out. I think I know what they want, and it's worse than invasion, worse than conquest, worse than anything we could have imagined. They're not waiting for us to reach a certain technology level. They're not waiting for our population to recover or decline. They're not waiting for the radiation to clear or the wasteland to bloom again. They're waiting for us to evolve. Think about it. The Zetans took samples from across 4 centuries: pre-industrial Japan, industrial age America, space age America, post-nuclear apocalypse. 4 distinct snapshots of human development. And what's the common thread? Pressure, conflict, adaptation. The Sengoku period in Japan was centuries of civil war. The American frontier was violent expansion and survival. The space race was Cold War competition pushing technological boundaries. And the wasteland? The wasteland is evolution accelerated, radiation forcing mutations, scarcity forcing adaptation, constant warfare forcing selection pressure. The Zetans aren't just studying us, they're cultivating us. They've been applying pressure for centuries, seeing how we respond. And the nuclear war, I don't think that was entirely our fault. I found something in the Zeta logs. A file dated October 22nd, 2077, the day before the Great War. It was encrypted, but Sally helped me crack it. Inside was a recording, a Zetan communication log. They knew the bombs were going to fall, knew exactly when, knew which silos would fire first, and they positioned their motherships in optimal observation orbits to record every detail of the nuclear exchange. They knew, and they didn't warn anyone, didn't intervene, didn't try to stop it. They let it happen because they wanted to see what came next. What comes after you irradiate an entire species? What mutations develop? What adaptations emerge? How does intelligence persist through catastrophic population collapse? These are the questions the Zetans wanted answered, and they got their data. 200 years of data. Ghouls who can survive radiation that would kill normal humans. Super mutants created by forced evolutionary virus. Wasteland humans adapting to survive on irradiated food and water. We're their experiment. The whole species, and the bombs were just another variable they introduced to see what would happen. But it gets worse. I found abduction logs from after the Great War. Zetans taking raiders, slavers, Brotherhood of Steel members, Enclave soldiers, sampling from different post-war factions, studying how human society reorganizes after collapse. They took super mutants and feral ghouls too, non-human results of human experimentation and radiation. All of it data, all of it samples. They're comparing us to ourselves. Pre-war humans versus post-war humans, baseline versus mutated, civilized versus wasteland. They're building a complete picture of human evolutionary potential under every condition they can create or observe. And you know what terrifies me? They're not done collecting data. The war happened 200 years ago. That's nothing on their timeline. They've been watching for 400 years. They're patient. They'll wait another 400 if they have to. Keep watching, keep abducting, keep studying, until we become what they're waiting for. I think the abominations are a clue. Those half-human, half-alien hybrids they created, their greatest triumph, they called it, but triumph toward what goal? Why would they want to combine human and Zetan genetics? Maybe they're not just studying us. Maybe they're trying to become us, or make us become them. Some kind of hybrid species that combines Zetan technology and logic with human adaptability and chaos. The best of both species merged into something new. That's what they're waiting for. The right moment to initiate full-scale hybridization. They've been testing it for years with individual subjects, creating those abominations, learning what works and what doesn't, refining the process. But they need more data, more samples, more time. They need us to evolve just a little bit further. That's why they haven't invaded. Invasion would disrupt the experiment, would introduce too many variables they couldn't control. Better to watch from orbit, better to take samples periodically, better to let us develop naturally with only subtle interventions to keep us on the right evolutionary path. The government knew some of this. Maybe not all of it, but enough. Enough to be terrified. That's why the cover-up was so absolute. It wasn't just about preventing panic. It was about hiding the fact that humanity wasn't in control of its own destiny, that we'd been laboratory subjects for centuries without knowing it. The Enclave tried to use the alien technology to level the playing field, reverse engineer their weapons, build their own advanced armor and aircraft, create a fighting force that could stand against an alien invasion if it came. But they were thinking too small. They thought the threat was military, conquest, invasion. They didn't understand that the Zetans don't want our planet. They want our genetics, our evolutionary potential, our ability to adapt and survive under conditions that would destroy other species. They want to harvest that and make it their own. I found evidence of other species aboard Zeta. Not human, not Zetan. stored in the deepest levels of the ship in cryopods we never accessed during the uprising. Aliens from other worlds, other experiments, other samples collected across the galaxy. We're not special to them. We're just one more data point in a study that spans solar systems. One more species being cultivated and observed and potentially harvested for useful traits. But here's the thing. We beat them once. A handful of humans from across history, working together, took their ship and destroyed their sister vessel. We did the impossible because we're human, and impossible is just another word for difficult. That has to scare them. It should scare them. They've been studying us for 400 years, and they still didn't see it coming, still didn't predict that we'd rise up, still didn't understand that you can't break the human spirit, no matter how much you try. Toshiro lost everything. 400 years stolen from him. His lord, his clan, his country, his entire world gone. But he didn't break. He picked up his sword and fought. Elliot watched his country destroy itself with nuclear fire. Everyone he knew dead. Everything he fought for meaningless. But he didn't break. He kept fighting. Sally spent 200 years as a prisoner, a child trapped in a nightmare that never ended. But she didn't break. She learned, adapted, survived. And when the chance came, she helped us take the ship. That's what the Zetans can't understand. That's what all their studying and sampling and data collection will never teach them. Humans don't give up. We don't surrender. We don't accept defeat, even when defeat is logical and rational and inevitable. We fight anyway. And that's why they're still watching instead of acting. They know if they invade, if they try to harvest us en masse, we'll resist. Some of us will survive. Some of us will adapt and will be stronger for it, more evolved, more dangerous. They're waiting for us to weaken ourselves first. Wait for another war, another collapse, another catastrophe that brings us to the brink of extinction. Then they'll make their move when we're too broken to fight back effectively. But they don't know the wasteland like I do. They don't understand what 200 years of radiation and violence and desperation have created. We're not weaker, we're harder, meaner, more ruthless. We've survived things that would have destroyed pre-war humanity. The wasteland isn't weakening us. It's forging us into something that can survive anything, even aliens. I've tried to tell people, tried to warn them, but who's going to believe me? A wastelander claiming aliens are orbiting Earth and conducting experiments on humanity? I sound like Query Verum. Like those crackpot conspiracy theorists the government silenced before the war. The Brotherhood of Steel has alien power cells in their armory. They know something's out there. The Enclave was studying alien specimens in Appalachia. They definitely knew, but neither faction is talking. Both are too busy fighting over the wasteland to worry about the threat hanging in orbit. And maybe that's exactly what the Zetans want. Keep us fighting each other, keep us distracted, keep us from organizing a unified defense against the real enemy. I still have the beacon. I can go back to Zeta anytime I want, check in with Sally and Elliot and Toshiro, maybe convince them to come down and help spread the word, maybe bring some of the alien technology we captured, prove that I'm not crazy. But I'm afraid if I go back up there, I won't come down again. Afraid I'll look out that viewport at the wasteland below and realize there's nothing left for me here either. Afraid I'll become like them, exiles from time living aboard a captured alien ship because we don't fit anywhere else. The wasteland doesn't need more survivors. It needs warriors. People willing to fight when the Zetans finally make their move. And that day is coming. I know it is. Every abduction brings them closer to whatever threshold they're waiting for. Every sample collected, every experiment completed, they're building towards something. And when they're ready, when they've gathered enough data and perfected their hybridization process and determined that humanity has evolved to the exact specifications they need, they're going to act. And we need to be ready. I've been documenting everything, writing it down, recording audio logs, collecting evidence, because when the Zetans make their move, humanity needs to know what we're facing, needs to understand that this isn't some random invasion. This is the culmination of 400 years of preparation, 400 years of study, 400 years of genetic sampling and evolutionary observation. They know everything about us, our strengths, our weaknesses, our history, our psychology. They've watched us at our best and our worst. They've seen us build civilizations and destroy them. They've recorded every adaptation, every mutation, every evolutionary leap we've made under pressure, and we know almost nothing about them. That's the asymmetry we're facing. That's why the cover-up was so dangerous. Every year the government hid the truth was another year the Zetans had to study us while we remained ignorant. Every silenced witness, every destroyed piece of evidence, every murdered conspiracy theorist was another advantage handed to an enemy that's been planning this for centuries. The Enclave thought they were being clever, thought they could reverse engineer alien technology and use it against them. But you can't out-tech a species that's been traveling between stars for who knows how long. You can't outplan an intelligence that thinks in centuries instead of election cycles. You can't out-prepare an enemy that's been preparing since before your country existed. The only advantage we have is the one thing they can't predict: human unpredictability, human irrationality, human refusal to accept the inevitable. I've been tracking abduction patterns since I escaped Zeta, using pre-war records I've found in military facilities, cross-referencing with Brotherhood of Steel reports and Enclave files, and I've noticed something. The abductions are accelerating. In the 1600s, they took Toshiro, probably a handful of others from that era, though I only met him. In the 1960s, they took Hartigan. The abduction rate was slow, methodical, 1 or 2 subjects per generation. But in the 1970s, right before the war, the rate spiked. Elliot and his entire medical team, Giles Wollstonecroft from Vault-Tec, multiple people from sensitive government positions, a senator, someone from the White House. They were grabbing everyone they could who had access to classified information about America's survival plans. And after the war, the rate spiked again. Raiders, slavers, Brotherhood members, Enclave soldiers, wastelanders. They're taking samples from every post-war faction, every mutation, every adaptation. Dozens of abductions per year instead of a handful per century. They're in the final phase of data collection. They're gathering everything they need before they make their move, and the rate is still increasing. Every month, I hear new reports, strange lights in the sky, people vanishing, entire caravans disappearing without a trace. The Flatwoods Monster. Sightings in Appalachia never stopped. Even after the war, even 200 years later, people see them in the woods. Zetan agents still operating on Earth's surface, still abducting, still collecting. How many people have they taken since I escaped Zeta? How many more samples do they need? What's the final number that triggers their invasion or hybridization or whatever they're planning? I wish I knew. I wish I'd found that information in their logs. But some files were too encrypted, too alien, too beyond my comprehension to crack. Sally might be able to access them. She's had 200 years to study their systems. But she's not down here to help. I'm alone with this knowledge, alone with the burden of knowing humanity's greatest threat and being unable to convince anyone it's real. The Brotherhood of Steel called me a lunatic when I tried to warn them, said I'd been exposed to too much radiation, suggested I was suffering from delusions. They have alien power cells in their armory, and they still won't admit the threat is real, won't even consider the possibility. The Enclave? I never got close enough to try. They shoot wastelanders on sight, and even if I could reach them, even if I could prove what I know, would they listen? Or would they just take my information and classify it, add it to their secret files, continue the cover-up that's been running for over a century? I tried telling people in settlements, Megaton, Rivet City, Tenpenny Tower, showed them the alien weapons I brought back from Zeta, the disintegrator, the atomizer, technology that doesn't exist anywhere on Earth, technology that proves everything I'm saying is true. Some people believed me, most didn't. A few tried to buy the weapons off me. Nobody wanted to think about the implications. Nobody wanted to accept that there's a threat in orbit we can't fight with conventional means. They'd rather focus on immediate dangers: super mutants, raiders, radiation, the Enclave, real threats they can see and shoot. Telling them about aliens watching from space? That's too abstract, too terrifying, too big, so they ignore it, rationalize it away, convince themselves I'm crazy or lying or misunderstood what I saw. And the Zetans keep watching, keep waiting, keep collecting their samples. I've thought about going back up there, taking the fight to them. Zeta is still in orbit, still functional, still has weapons that could destroy the other motherships if we could learn to use them properly. Sally, Elliot, and Toshiro are still aboard. We could form a crew, learn the systems, hunt down every Zetan vessel in orbit, and destroy them before they can act. But that's probably exactly what they expect, probably what they're waiting for. The moment we become aggressive enough, technologically advanced enough, unified enough to pose a real threat, that's when they'll know we've reached the evolutionary stage they've been cultivating us toward. That's when they'll harvest us. It's a trap. The whole thing is a trap. If we do nothing, they keep studying us until they're ready. If we fight back, we prove we're ready. Either way, they win. Unless we can find a third option, something they haven't predicted, something impossible. That's very human of me, isn't it? Faced with an impossible situation, refusing to accept either option, searching for a third path that doesn't exist. The Zetans have probably seen this pattern in their data 1,000 times. Humans rejecting binary choices, humans creating alternatives out of sheer, stubborn refusal to accept reality. Maybe that's our strength. Maybe that's what they can't replicate or predict or control. Our absolute refusal to play by the rules of logic. I keep thinking about the abominations, those half-human, half-Zetan hybrids. The Zetans called them their greatest triumph, but they locked them in cells like dangerous animals, created them, and then feared them. Why? Because they're unpredictable, because they have human chaos mixed with Zetan intelligence, because they're exactly what the Zetans claim to want, and they're too dangerous to control. That's the flaw in their plan. They want to merge with us, take our evolutionary advantages for themselves, but those advantages are exactly the traits that make us impossible to control. Adaptability requires flexibility. Survival requires unpredictability. You can't have one without the other. If they succeed in creating a hybrid species, they won't be able to control it. It'll turn on them eventually. Human nature guarantees it. We don't accept authority well. We rebel, we fight, we refuse to stay in the boxes others create for us. The abominations proved that. They were supposed to be weapons, tools, controllable assets. Instead, they became liabilities. Dangerous, unpredictable, had to be locked away. That's what will happen on a species-wide scale if the Zetans try to hybridize humanity. They'll create something they can't control, something that will destroy them. Maybe that's the warning I should be spreading. Not fear of invasion, not warnings about alien threats, but hope. Hope that whatever the Zetans are planning, it'll backfire. It has to backfire. Because you can't control chaos. You can only observe it, study it, fear it. And the Zetans should be very, very afraid. I've started training. Not just combat training, strategic thinking, learning everything I can about pre-war military tactics, studying alien technology, preparing for the day when we'll need to fight back. Because that day is coming. I know it is. The abduction rate keeps accelerating. The Flatwoods, monster sightings keep increasing. The strange lights in the sky keep appearing. They're rushing now. Something changed. Some threshold was crossed. Some data point was reached that told them it's almost time. Maybe it was me. Maybe escaping Zeta and destroying their sister ship was the trigger. Proof that humans had evolved to the point where even individual wastelanders could pose a threat to their operations. Proof that we'd reached the stage they've been waiting for. If that's true, then I started this. I triggered the countdown, and I need to be the one to stop it. I'm going back to Zeta. Not to hide, not to exile myself from time like the others, but to learn, to study their technology, to find their weaknesses, to prepare for the war that's coming. Sally can teach me their systems. Elliot can help me understand their weapons. Toshiro can train me in combat disciplines that have survived 400 years because they work. Together, we can figure out how to fight them, how to win, and then I'm coming back down, and I'm going to convince the Brotherhood, the Enclave, every faction in the wasteland that we need to unite, need to prepare, need to be ready for the day. When the Zetans stop watching and start acting, because that day is coming. Soon, I can feel it. Every abduction brings it closer. Every sample collected, every experiment completed. They're in the final stages of whatever they're planning. And when they're ready, when they finally make their move, humanity needs to be ready too. We've survived nuclear fire, survived radiation that should have killed us, survived 200 years of wasteland warfare and mutation and desperation. We're harder than we've ever been, stronger, more adaptable, more dangerous. The Zetans think they've been cultivating us, guiding our evolution, preparing us for harvest, but they've made a mistake. They've been breeding survivors, warriors, people who refuse to give up no matter how hopeless the situation looks. And now they're going to reap what they've sown. 400 years they've been watching. 400 years they've been waiting. 400 years they've been studying human nature and still not understanding the fundamental truth about our species. We don't stay down. We don't accept defeat. We don't surrender. We fight back. And when the Zetans finally come for us, when they descend from orbit with their hybridization plans and their genetic harvest and their 400 years of preparation, they're going to learn what the wasteland has known for 200 years. Humanity is the most dangerous thing in the universe, not because of our technology, not because of our intelligence, but because we refuse to die. We refuse to be controlled. We refuse to accept that anything is impossible. The Zetans wanted to study evolution under pressure. Well, they've created the perfect laboratory. 200 years of nuclear wasteland, radiation, mutation, warfare, desperation. We've evolved all right into something that can survive anything, even aliens. I'm going back up there tomorrow, taking the beacon to Zeta, learning everything I can, and then I'm coming back down to prepare for war. The real war. Not Brotherhood versus Enclave, not humans versus super mutants, but Earth versus the threat that's been hanging over our heads for 400 years. They've been watching since 1600. They watched us destroy ourselves, and someday soon they're going to stop watching and start acting. I want to be ready. I want humanity to be ready. I want to look up at those motherships in orbit and know that we have a fighting chance. Because if we don't fight, if we don't resist, if we don't refuse to accept the fate they've planned for us, then 400 years of human history, 400 years of survival and adaptation, evolution, all of it will have been for nothing. Will just be another sample in their collection. Another experiment completed, another species harvested and forgotten. I won't accept that. I can't accept that. The wasteland taught me to survive. Zeta taught me what we're up against. And now I'm going to teach the wasteland how to fight back. They've been watching since 1600. They watched us destroy ourselves. And when they finally make their move, they're going to learn what happens when you push humanity too far. We push back. If this confession meant something to you, leave a like. It's the only way I know you liked the video. The Zetans are still up there, still watching, still waiting, but their time is running out, and ours is just beginning.